The British ruling class and the Islamization of Europe. First and foremost, one should abandon the identification of the British ruling class with the national elite. In reality, it represents a supranational force, claiming world dominance and convinced of its historical right to it. Emphasizing their supranational nature, representatives of the British elite often refer to native Englishmen as locals. An illustration of the deep divide between the interests of the ruling class and the people of Britain is a poll on attitudes towards Prime Minister Starmer's initiative to recognize a Palestinian state. According to the results, almost 9 out of 10 Britons oppose the unconditional recognition of Palestine. The ruling class's attitude towards Britain is little different from its attitude towards any other country. It seeks to exploit its resources and keep the population in subjection. The only difference is that within Britain, it doesn't need intermediaries. It acts openly. The word globalism conceals a new British empire. The modern global world is in many ways an embodiment of the concept of a global British liberal empire. Formulated in the intellectual circles of the 19th century, this concept was implemented in the 20th century through the efforts of the Milner Group and the Round Table movement, as described by the American historian Carroll Quigley in his book, The Anglo-American Establishment. Today, the term globalism actually conceals a new British empire whose influence has spread throughout the world through the international organizations it created, such as the UN, WHO, IMF, WTO, ICC, and others. It is no coincidence that British magazine The Economist called President Donald Trump's activities aimed at undermining the global world order the greatest danger. Quote, "The greatest danger at present is the incumbency of an American president who despises international norms, who disparages free trade, and who continually flirts with abandoning America's essential role in maintaining the global legal order." End of quote. The dual role of scientific and technological progress. The British ruling class is a product of capitalism. Its main task is to resolve the fundamental contradiction of capitalism between the global nature of the world economy and the national boundaries of states. The driving force fueling the development of capitalism and the ruling class itself was rapid scientific and technological progress, which ensured an accelerated turnover of capital. However, this same progress contributed to the growth of socio-economic freedom for the masses, and therefore to the weakening of the ruling class's power. The middle class as the main threat. The British ruling class sees the greatest danger to itself in the middle class, the independent and educated part of society, including entrepreneurs and intellectuals, those very people whom it traditionally calls the bourgeoisie. The rapid pace of scientific and technological progress, combined with democratic institutions, could have gradually led to the complete independence of the middle class and its liberation from the control of the elite. Fearing such an outcome, the ruling class, from the mid-1960s onwards, embarked on a course of artificially hindering progress and degrading society. English socialism as a tool for maintaining power. However, the slowdown in scientific and technological progress proved to be a double-edged sword. It depleted the source of energy that fueled the ruling class. The British elite saw a way out of this situation in establishing a totalitarian regime capable of perpetuating its power. The ideological basis for such a regime was prepared back in the 19th century by British Fabian socialists. The writer George Orwell, in his novel 1984, called this system IngSoc, or English socialism. Until the mid-20th century, all the conditions for establishing an IngSoc-style regime under the banner of leftist ideology remained in developed countries. The pace of scientific and technological progress remained high. The working class was numerous and active, and the influence of socialists on the masses was significant. Radical Islam as a new pillar of power. However, in the 1980s, the socio-political base of English socialism began to weaken. The collapse of the Soviet Union devalued the left-wing ideology, and the relocation of industry to third-world countries led to the erosion of the working class. Under these circumstances, the British ruling class placed its bet on radical Islam, a system far more effective than English socialism in ensuring the obedience of the masses and the absolute power of the ruling elite. The British ruling class's connection to radical Islam. The founders of the radical Islamic movement, Salafism, were linked to British intelligence services, and their organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, was founded in 1928 with the assistance of British intelligence and the British Suez Canal Company. The Muslim Brotherhood helped London maintain control of the Suez Canal and participated in the elimination of Middle Eastern leaders whose policies ran counter to British interests. In 1961, the British establishment relocated the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood from Egypt to London, saving its leadership from repression by Egyptian President Nasser. Since then, England has been the main stronghold of radical Islam. In the same 1960s, the state of Qatar became the second center of the Muslim Brotherhood, which subsequently transformed into the main financial sponsor of radical Islam. In 2016, thanks to the efforts of British Ambassador Richard Moore, Turkey became the third center for the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood Network in Europe. The formation of the European Union in 1993 limited the sovereignty of national states and paved the way for the formation of an extensive network of the Muslim Brotherhood on the European continent. By the beginning of the 2020s, this process was practically complete, as evidenced by the report of Member of the European Parliament Charlie Weimers entitled Network of Networks, the Muslim Brotherhood in Europe. As a result, Great Britain became a key center for controlling radical Islam, whose network spread to Asia and Europe. Thus, the British ruling class, relying on the European infrastructure of the Muslim Brotherhood, gained an additional opportunity to establish control over Western Europe. The royal family and the fashion for Islam. By accelerating the process of Islamization, the British ruling class is openly demonstrating its closeness to the Islamic world. For example, in April 2018, the Daily Mail published an article claiming that Queen Elizabeth II is a direct descendant of the founder of Islam, the Prophet Muhammad. The Queen's son, the current King Charles III, who is the patron of the Center for Islamic Studies in Oxford, shows particular zeal in promoting Islam. In June 2025, at the ceremony marking the center's 40th anniversary, he said, quote, "Founded in 1985, the center has become a beacon of Islamic scholarship. The center's ongoing commitment to objective scholarship and international cooperation, underpinned by principles of dialogue, deep understanding, and mutual respect, is more imperative than ever in today's world." End of quote. Charles's strange love for the Arab religion may be explained by the fact that, while Prince of Wales, he secretly converted to Islam. The Grand Mufti of Cyprus, Nazim al-Haqqani, stated this in 1996, quote, "Did you know that Prince Charles has converted to Islam? Yes, he is a Muslim. I can't say more, but it happened in Turkey. Oh yes, he converted all right." End of quote. Rumors about the Prince of Wales converting to Islam remain controversial. Nevertheless, the fact that official representatives were forced to deny them is a result of the prince's statements and actions. In confirmation of the rumors, Charles took steps aimed at giving Islam a special status. He created a group of 12 wise men who advise him on matters of the Islamic religion. The secretive nature of the group's meetings has sparked considerable discussion, as there are no similar groups for other religious denominations in Great Britain. The royal family's example has become something of a trend among the British aristocracy. Some of its members are voluntarily converting to Islam, adapting to societal changes. Russian historian Andrei Fursov noted in an interview, "Some of the British elite have begun to convert to Islam, even though the religion is not of fundamental importance to them. This process appears to be an attempt to adapt to change." Fursov recounted a private conversation with one of the aristocrats who explained his conversion to Islam by saying that it was promising. These words are corroborated by a publication on the Islamic website Islam Awareness, which in 2004 boastfully listed members of the British aristocracy and VIVE IPS who had converted to Islam. history repeats itself like a bad dream. In the 1930s, the Prince of Wales, Edward, openly sympathized with Hitler. As King Edward VIII, he actively promoted Nazism in British society, as a result of which many members of the upper class joined the Nazi Party. In the 1990s, the Prince of Wales, Charles, openly sympathizes with Islam. Having become King Charles III, he actively promotes Islam in British society, as a result of which many members of the upper class are adopting the religion of the Bedouin of Arabia. Thus, the British ruling class has once again sided with the forces of destruction, seeking to push the world towards another catastrophe. Methods of imposing radical Islam in Europe. The methods of the British ruling class to impose radical Islam were outlined by Evgeny Gilbo in his lecture on the problem of racial substitution in Europe. Quote, "To achieve Islamization, the British elite has relied on a radical form of Islam. Using state funds, the government is undertaking a massive construction of mosques and paying salaries to radical imams who indoctrinate young people. The construction of mosques in Europe is driven by government programs, not by migrant demand. Muslims are forced into mosques through administrative measures, as only 3% of them are truly religious. Islamic terrorism in Europe is coordinated by European intelligence services, which control Muslim preachers and direct them towards radicalization. Similar processes are occurring in Russia, where the influence of British agents within the intelligence services remains significant. In Germany, the intelligence services effectively operate under Anglo-American control. Britain plays a key role in supporting Islamic radicalism in Europe." End of quote. Suppression of indigenous resistance. By condoning Islamization, the British ruling class is not only flooding the country with migrants, but also encouraging newcomers to commit crimes against the native population. The town of Rochdale, where for many years gangs of migrants raped children under the protection of the police and prosecutors, has become a scandalous symbol of modern Britain. To suppress the resistance of the indigenous population, the Conservative government of Rishi Sunak passed the Internet Safety Act 2023, unofficially known as the Digital Gulag Act. This law introduced total Internet censorship, restricted freedom of speech and access to information, and abolished the right to privacy. Not content with this, in July 2025, Keir Starmer's Labour government established a special police unit to monitor anti-immigration sentiment on social media. The Islamization of the birthplace of modern democracy has gone so far that Italian journalist Giulio Meotti, who visited Britain in 2025, wrote an article with the threatening headline, "England could become an Islamic state with nuclear weapons." Conclusion. In an effort to retain power, the British ruling class is prepared to sacrifice one of the greatest achievements of human history, European civilization, leaving it to be torn apart by barbarians whose ethnogenesis has frozen at the tribe stage. Evgeny Gilbo spoke about the scale of the impending catastrophe and the possibility of stopping it in his lecture. Quote, "Europe is rapidly becoming overrun with ethnically alien elements. They form pockets of chaos that, gradually expanding, capture ever more territories. Over time, these migrants will establish their own cultural hegemony and displace the indigenous population, exterminating or assimilating them. It's enough to recall Syria and Iraq, where the indigenous Christian population has been completely replaced by Arab Muslim immigrants. However, ethnic substitution in Europe is not a spontaneous process. It is entirely determined by state policies that, instead of promoting the assimilation of migrants, encourage their cultural and religious dominance. Consequently, this process is reversible, provided that multiculturalism is abandoned." End of quote. Thus, the Islamization of Europe is not a fatal inevitability. This process can be stopped and reversed if nationally oriented forces come to power in the European Union countries. The fact that global media outlets label these forces as far-right reflects the fear of the British ruling class of the potential collapse of its Islamic project. A link to the article text with sources is provided below this video.